Sure it's good to have all you here, and I'm honored by your presence. Today I'm going to tell you about the most famous B-17 bombing raid that ever was. One thing that made it famous, it occurred on my birthday in 1943, the day I was 22. This raid was to a city that's about 90 miles east, a little southeast of Frankfurt, named Schweinfurt. Before World War II, it was the world's largest producer and the world's largest exporter of bearings. Ball bearings, roll bearings. So in summer of '42, when the 8th Air Force was getting organized to go on this bombing campaign, it was #1 target. But they didn't get to it for almost a year. At first, we bombed targets closest to England. And when we assigned Schweinfurt, they called it a deep penetration raid, further than we'd ever been before. And this was many, many months before the escorting P-51s became available. Meantime, we had some P-47s there, they couldn't go but about 100 miles beyond the coastline, and this was several hundred miles. Now, I'm going to tell you a blow-by-blow account of the combat of this thing, but before I get to that, I'm going to tell you a lot of the details. One thing you want to remember from this is the number 185. It was 185 B-17s that went to Schweinfurt. There's other things that's significant on 185. When I was in Nairobi, Kenya in '79, I mailed 185 picture postcards back to the United States. And back in 1835, John Wayne and a group of Texans had that Battle of the Alamo. There's 185 of them at the Alamo. 185. Now, on these bombing raids, we are awake up to about 3 hours before daylight by some sergeant, and he tells us the time of the briefing of the bombing raid, and it's usually before daylight, and we usually come out of that briefing about daylight and go out to airplanes. So he wakes us up, and we go get something to eat and come back, brush our teeth, and get to the briefing room on schedule. And this day, going to and from the briefing room, is real foggy. You can hardly see the adjacent building. You know, fog is not good flying weather. Okay. When we got ready to take off, we couldn't. It was foggy. On this same date, from a bunch of air bases in southern England, a bunch of new B-17s, model F, that had more gas tanks, went on a companion raid another 150 miles to Regensburg, where they bombed an aircraft assembly plant that was assembling those Messerschmitt fighters. And in the briefing, the Lieutenant Colonel making the briefing said that after they bomb that target at Regensburg, they will presumably land. That was the first shuttle bombing raid to Africa, and they wouldn't put that information out as long as they didn't have to, you know, it was secrets all. So we didn't know the next day that they went to North Africa. Now, they had fog down in southern England, but it wasn't as bad as ours. These Regensburg bombers got off about an hour and a half late, and we got off 4.5 to 5 hours late. Okay. These Regensburg bombers met the usual bunch of enemy fighter planes, but the Luftwaffe knew that that wasn't all the bombers, and they, I imagine, knew all about that fog in England, see? And the British listening post that monitors the radio traffic on the continent intercepted messages that the Luftwaffe was moving fighters from northern Germany and from the Berlin area and from the Paris area up there near Frankfurt to wait on these other bombers, which was us. Now, I want to tell you a few other things. Before we start to shoot, I want to tell you a few other things.
Sit down if you want to. There you go.
Yeah, that's just good.
There you go. Keep on it.
We had one route into the target, and south of there was another route, which is our return route back to England. I went back over, I'm going to skip ahead 40 years here. I went back over to Stratford as a tourist 40 years after the war. And there's a boy from Winona there in a tank base there at Stratford. There used to be a dive bomber, Stuka dive bombing base for the Luftwaffe. And he knew he was coming. And there's a man that works at the newspaper office there. He told him I was coming, and this fellow had written a book about that Stratford raid. But he never had talked to a combatant. He just had talked to survivors there. So this newspaper man wanted to interview me, and he did. City of 30,000, they had my story and my photograph on the front page of this newspaper there in Stratford in 1983. All right, the fellow up at Winona that sells monuments and tombstones wanted us to go by the cemetery at Stratford and see how the monuments are and how they keep the cemetery. They keep the cemeteries over there about 4 times as pretty as ours, and about half the graves have live flowers on them. And about every 60 feet there's a faucet sticking up where you can get you some water and go water your flowers. So those Germans are going to do a lot better job in the cemeteries. And I looked at a group of 7 monuments there and read the date on them. 4 of those 7, they died on the day of that raid.
Yeah.
And I felt responsible because we knew we didn't hit the target with all our bombs, see? Small target. So I felt responsible for these folks that died there in the bombing raid there, civilians.
Uncle Charles, when you visited them, how did they treat you as an American who dropped the bombs there?
Okay, it was just 20 miles from Stratford to the East German frontier. At that time, Germany was still divided. This is 83, and we've been helping them recover from World War II for 40 years. And they were real friendly to the Americans and didn't have much regard for the Russians. See?
Oh, yeah.
So we were treated real well.
That's good.
And that's another thing interesting about that, see? Okay, we'll go back and get ready for the shooting. Okay, here comes the 185 B-17 going towards Stratford. We are met by 300 fighter planes, like a swarm of bees. Now the procedure for those German fighters, their procedure is usually the first attack will be a head-on attack. Then they'll make 1 or 2 miscellaneous attacks, and then they about out of ammunition. I'm in the high group, and up here, quarter mile ahead of us and a couple of 100 yards below us is the lead group. And on this raid, this lead group caught the brunt of all these fighters making these head-on attacks. They'd be 2 and 4 in formation, sometimes 6, making head-on attacks. Up in this high group, we was watching this slaughter down there. We weren't even under attack yet. But it was so bad that I got sort of sick. And I told the co-pilot to fly a while. Well, after about 10, 15 seconds, I took it back over. In the meantime, I could not watch all the action because I had to fly formation. But I could glance at it back and forth. But we all in the cruiser had on headsets and we was on what's called intercom. We could talk to each other. And I'd hear a lot of reports on that. There's one plane not too far from us. They, after about 4 or 5 minutes, they said, it's on fire. So I looked down there, and the tail gunner bailed out, and he and the chute both on fire. So I'd go back and fly formation for 3 or 4 seconds, then I heard on the intercom that it blew up. So I looked over there, and I could see the left wing flopping through the sky, and 2 burning gasoline tanks going down, and no more chutes.
Was that one in your particular little tight formation? That plane?
They're about 50 feet apart or more from wingtip to wingtip. You're supposed to stay 50 feet or more.
Right, and you have to keep it real tight.
Okay, this lead group that had the run of all these fighters, they lost all but 2.
Oh my goodness.
And like I said, the first 4 or 5 minutes, we wasn't even under attack. Now, at the briefing that day, when we got out of the briefing, I saw a couple of my crew members before we left the area. I told one of the sergeants, the all sergeant, so go get some more ammunition. He said, Sergeant so-and-so's already gone. I said, you go get some more. And that was before we knew we was going to have all those fighters. We just knew it was going to be a tough raid, deep penetration. And we fired 8,000 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition that day. That had to kill a lot of deer, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the total of our claims of enemy aircraft attacked and shot down, we claim to have shot down 3 fighters and damaged 2 more. And I believe we did because if we hadn't, they'd have come in closer and been more accurate with their shooting. They usually start shooting at about 800 yards, which is half mile, but they're not very accurate until they get closer. And they have tracers, and also when the 20 millimeters hit anything, they are quite visible with a flash and some kind of debris. And
What airspeed did you fly, and what airspeed was these fighter planes able to fly compared to y'all?
we were doing about 200 miles an hour, and they are 40 to 50 miles an hour faster or more, depending on where they are. Okay, on this route to the target, it's sort of a zigzag route in that you're avoiding fortified areas. See, all the cities overhead had aircraft guns around them. And just before you got to the target, you had what they call an IP, initial point. From that point, you'd fly straight to the target. It's anywhere from 10 to 20 miles away. All these targets, they had a smoke screen up when we got there. Usually the smoke screen just partially effective. In this case, that factory is 100 yards from a little river, and that helped us pinpoint the target in spite of that smoke screen. And I saw a smoke screen in Paris one day. The only thing you could see was the Eiffel Tower. Now, when we, our attacks on our plane were mostly in the second 10 minutes of those fighters being in the air, then they're out of ammunition, see? But after we had dropped our bombs and was going to turn to go back towards England, I was sort of on the outside of the group there, and to keep from getting further outside, I was going to raise that wing up and stay right in there. Use a lot of rudder. In this control and management of defending against those fighters, on the intercom, if any gunner thinks that our plane is the target of a fighter coming our direction, he'll request action on the intercom. That's a request to the pilot to take evasive action if it's feasible, like a porpoise. Well, just as I started that turn, I heard the word action. But I was going to make this big turn anyway, see? About a 70-degree bank. The 20 millimeters that the Germans shot at us were fused to explode at 1,200 yards so it wouldn't go down and shoot up the homeland. See, they do a lot of damage to homeland if they didn't do that, see? Okay, when these, it had two 20 millimeter cannons each fighter plane and 4 30 caliber. When they exploded, it had a little gray puff of smoke. So just as I got that wing up, here comes this gray puff of smoke right on the number 1 engine. Had I not made that steep turn, this is a flying maneuver, you know, be in the right place at the right time, they would hit the cockpit. In that 1 or 2 seconds involved there, the plane moved a little bit, see? The fighter had fired from 1,200 yards, see? So we had a close call on that. Now, in spite of all that action, we had very little damage from all those fighter planes. Where 2 months before, flying up to Kiel and all the temperatures, well, I got shot up real bad, see? Now, we knew we lost a lot of planes, see, from the intercom conversation. We just had 14 bombers in that 185. We lost a bunch. So when we got down below 15,000 on the way down in western France, I had my navigator come out of his position and look around and take inventory of our group. And that 14, there was 9 of us left. We lost 5. Now, the day or 2 after that raid, my mood was, I'll be glad when we get shot down and it'll all be over with. Morale was low. But after 2 or 3 days, I thought we got over that. And the whole 8th Air Force was so shot up that they couldn't mount any serious raids for 2 or 3 weeks till we just had a few raids to targets, and the P-47s could go with us. Just, you know, not all that far from England. Now this was my birthday, August 17th. On October the 14th, there was another raid on Schweinfurt that we didn't go on. It wasn't a maximum effort. But they lost 60 bombers that day. But I wasn't involved in that. And in February, the big British 4-engine night bombers bombed Schweinfurt. So that tore up the town and everything. Y'all got any questions?
The second raid that you said where about 60 of them went, it was trying to get the same factory? That was the same target? Was it on a clear day or was it real foggy too?
See, over half of all bearings manufactured in Germany made in Schweinfurt. Big priority target. Okay, the name of that factory was SKL. Out there in 83, 4 years later, there's one central rectangular building there about 11 stories high. And I reckon they had manufacturing and offices both there. The place we bombed had a couple of large buildings and then 4 additions there that looks like military barracks, couldn't they? Uniform and space And they were annexes, you might say. Okay, about a third of the B-17 bombers carried cameras. They would take a picture every few seconds when you said it, and they always start those cameras before the bombs hit. And that gives you a view of what the target was just before then, where prior to that, it may have been a week or two since a reconnaissance raid had photographed the area. All right, these strike photographs are taken before the bombs hit. These 4 extra buildings had there. Between those buildings, they had erected a blast wall to minimize bomb damage. The Germans are sharp. See, if you have a 500-pound bomb falls here in a building 30, 40 feet away, be a lot of blast damage, but this wall was going to minimize that.
They were smart, but they weren't very moral.
Right.
And that was my 11th raid, and the 2 of us 25. Okay. When I went over there in England, there's 25 of us went together. Got there the first part of June. 25 in a group. In December, there was 5 of us left. All the other ones shot down. So.
Were they all presumed dead, or were any of them in concentration camps or internment?
About half of them survived as a POW. You remember George Harris had the Hereford farm going over?
I do.
He had a brother that's 2 years older than me that was in the Iowa group, and he lived in the adjoining barracks. He got shot down on his next to last raid.
Oh, man.
I had to come home and see his pregnant wife, who was 8.5 months pregnant, and his mother, and they had both been crying for 6 weeks. And he wasn't on all that tough a raid, he just had poor luck, you know. Any questions, Harold?
Why didn't you take me with you? Why didn't you take me with you?
Oh, goodness.
You wasn't old enough.
You were too young. Wow.
Okay, no more questions. I will dismiss this session.
Well, I have one more thing. I had forgotten that it was on your birthday that y'all had this raid.
August 17th, 43.
And you said, I wanted to give them an idea, and they may know, but you said you had to get up 3 hours early and everything. Y'all had to keep circling to make a formation within a formation within a formation, right? To go as one big group. How long did it take to get that formation made, put together, to go over there?
Okay, we had to take off and get our 18 planes on an ordinary raid, and 6 to a squadron, 3 squadrons. We'd climb up, getting higher and joining other groups. We wound up about 22,000 with 3 of those groups would be called a wing. We'd have 1 or more wings that would go together across the channel and continue climbing. We'd be at 27,000 time we got to the enemy coastline.
How was it? How were the planes chosen? The first group that went in that was getting shot up so much, that you saw get shot up, how was it you weren't in that group? How do they choose which groups is the front?
I don't know.
I mean,
Y'all heard
talk
me.
about luck.
Y'all heard the phrase,
Good luck.
y'all heard the phrase, tail end Charlie? Okay, the low squadron in a group of these 3 squadrons, the low squadron is the lowest level from a head-on view. And the fellow on the left rear there, he's the rear man, so tail end. Well, from a fighter attacking from the rear, he's the closest target, so he's a target of choice for the enemy fighter, see? So tail end Charlie gets shot pretty bad. I was tail end Charlie the day I got shot up. Keep keel on my 3rd raid.
Really too.
But the Slifer was my 11th raid. Now we had a team meeting just before we got through with our tour of duty in December. And we exchanged addresses back in the United States and reminisced a lot. And it was Doris said that on that Slifer raid, we had as many attacks on our plane on that one raid as we had on the other 24 raids combined.
Wow. So,
We needed that ammunition, see?
yeah, I'm glad you
And
had
ammunition's heavy,
Yeah, it is.
real heavy.
Did y'all have any of your planes that made it over there and back, but not quite enough fuel to make it back to land in England, or did they all have enough fuel?
We didn't have any fuel trouble that raid, but we had fuel trouble on other raids.
Oh, wow.
We had a raid on a target in the Frankfurt area, and there's more clouds in the target area than they anticipated. The lead bombardier couldn't find the target. That commander of all those 400 or 500 bombers made a big circular. We're going to try again. At 27,000 feet. Well, about half of the B-17s was having to use full power to stay in formation or close to formation. And I don't remember how that raid come out, but before we got to the coastline, some of those folks ran out of gas. Several of them had to ditch in the English Channel. I landed at the first air base I came to and got some gas. And David, that was quite dramatic. When we was on the downwind leg, about a minute and a half from landing, one engine ran out of gas. We parked at the ramp to get the gas, we lost another. We made it, dude.
Wow.
You made it.
Wow.
We made it. Now, another raid, they got the bright idea that they go, remember the Buzz Bomb program?
Yes.
It started about a month after I left, see? But the Allies knew the Germans were doing something. There was a lot of activity in construction over there where the Buzz Bomb things were. So we were going to drop a bunch of bombs on the target just right across the ocean. So they got their bright idea, since it's a close target, didn't need all that much fuel capacity, it put on an extra 1,000-pound bomb under each wing. Well, the bombs not only gave us more weight, give you more drag, reference airflow. On that raid, some of them had to ditch it in the channel. We landed early as we could and got some gas. So there's a lot of details to this war that is in the training manual.
Right. And the English Channel was pretty rough water some of the time and really cold, right?
Now, when I got through with my tour of duty, I was halfway engaged to a girl in Wichita, Kansas. That's where my brother States
How did you
lived.
get halfway?
He had introduced me to her.
Explain that.
Okay, I was offered some jobs. In lieu of going home, I was offered some jobs, say there in England. One of them was to fly with a British pilot in a Mosquito bomber and go over the target route an hour ahead of the bomber's arrival and check on the weather and stuff like that. They promised to make me a major within 4 months. I was a captain then, see. I turned that down, and I was halfway engaged, see.
Yeah. They want to know how you got halfway engaged.
And
Made up your mind?
another thing was to be a training officer. On my first raid in June of '43, a pilot who had some experience went with me as my co-pilot. He had been on some combat raids, and that was his project. He'd fly with these new pilots on one rate and get them sort of checked out. But I turned that down too, see.
Yeah.
Another thing, they wanted somebody down in London where all the new crews came in to be on a training crew there. They already had a bunch of them, but they like rotate me up for a few months. But I came on back and got married in Wichita, Kansas.
Did you marry that girl that you was
Yeah.
halfway engaged to?
And a year and a half later, I was in a bad car wreck. I lost her and a 2-month-old daughter. And I was in the hospital for a month.
Oh. You never told us that.
Was that wreck, where'd that wreck happen? Was it Texas or where was that wreck?
We were en route from Albuquerque, New Mexico to Camp 7 to get out of the military to be a pilot for Eastern Airlines. Was en route to the Separation Summit. We're just east of Terrell, Texas, which is just east of Dallas. On a curve there, this is in the spring, we got in orbit, went over hit in a bar pit that wasn't very deep, but we had a sudden stop at 50 miles an hour. No seatbelts. Well, I had some damage up here, both hips dislocated, but my wife and baby both got all cut up and they bled to death. That was in the spring of '45. I was in the hospital for a month at Greenville, Texas, at a military base.
I think that's where Daddy drove out to visit you, right?
David, you knew I was married 4 times, didn't you?
Yeah.
First 3 wives died. The last one I divorced.
Well, at least you didn't cut their heads off like Kenny Davis.
She was a nut.
Uncle Charles, I appreciate your stories. I mean,
That
your
was fun.
insight and stuff on the board.
That's the one that you should have been halfway engaged to.
Yeah, that should have been the one.